What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 186 of the Stand Up Guys podcast. I'm your host, incomparable Zach Jones, joined as always by the Ninth Wonder, Chocolate Thunder, looking for a few good PPs for a few good DPs, the tag teaming, double creaming. You take the front, he'll take the back. You'll be dancing all night, sack to sack. The phenomenal AJ Singh.
Sounds like a hell of a time, man.
Man, AJ, what have you been doing with yourself? You been watching anything? Doing anything fun?
Yeah, I hope I can recall all the stuff I've been watching. I have been watching some stuff. Okay, first things first, I watched a part of the first episode, and not because it's not great. I only did this. I'll get to the show, but I only did this because my girlfriend, she walked in right when I was watching it, and I told her how good this show looked to me. And she was like, "Oh, well, then turn it off and watch together when we have a chance." And I was like, "Okay." But the Hulu show Shogun.
Okay, yeah, I've watched it as well.
Okay, so I've only watched part of the first episode, but it looks really good to me, and I'm intrigued by what goes on in that show. What did you experience with it?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Definitely worth a watch. I will say I've like because I've listened to other podcasts people talk about it, and they're like putting it on like their really high like best of the year list. And I'm like I think it's very good, very strong, but I don't know if I like it quite as much as like some people. But yeah, it's a strong show. I think definitely worth a watch.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. She had never watched The Godfather, so we had to go and watch that together.
Man, can I tell you, I still have not seen those movies. And it's one of those things where it's like, I know I need to. It's just, I look at them and they're like so long and I'm like, I know I need to.
It's like, it's worth it. All that length of the movie, there's nothing that needs to be cut down. Like, it's well edited, I would say, like, and you know how hard it was to like shoot a scene back then? Like, you couldn't just like, they didn't have the technology that we have today. Like, they had to do it like usually like in limited scenes. Like, they had to get it right, pretty quickly. And
right.
the cameras and everything, like, I don't know. It's just, from what I understood, like, it was a hard task, but like, it's well done, man. And we're still gonna watch the second Godfather 2. Don't watch the third one. Don't ever watch the third one.
I was just going to ask your opinion on the third one because I know it's controversial where a lot of people think it's trash, but then I've heard other people be like, well, it's not as bad as people make it out to be.
I mean, when you're used to the franchise being what it was, like, then it is bad. Like, it's a huge deviation from like what you're used to in The Godfather, So yeah.
Hey, I'm curious because I know a couple years ago they actually like did a different like cut of Godfather 3. I think they called it like Godfather 3 Coda or something. Did you watch that cut by chance?
I haven't heard of it, no.
Yeah, they recut it, and I was just like, dude, I was just wondering, like, do people like that cut better or whatever,
I mean, you could only go up from there, so I'm sure it was better than what it was. Like, it was, yeah.
Well, I've heard the criticism that, like, Francis Ford Coppola put his daughter, Sofia Coppola, as she was like a child at the time or something, like a young actress in the movie, and like apparently she wasn't a very good actress. She went on to be like a well-known director, but like apparently like
I don't think
her
she
acting
was a child.
great.
She wasn't a child. I think she
Oh,
was.
okay.
I think she was like Michael and Sonny's sister. So she was like the daughter of Don Corleone.
Oh, okay.
And oh my god, yeah, she stands out. She's like a sore thumb in that movie. She's ridiculous. Like, she's over the top, and just like, we were laughing at her. Like, when we saw her scene, like, you don't even have to like mention how bad she is. Like, everybody picks up on it immediately. Like, she takes over the scene in a bad way.
Did you know that like Nicolas Cage is actually a Coppola? I think he's like the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola, but like
I heard about that.
He like changed his name to Cage to like differentiate himself or whatever.
Which is wild because I mean, like, if he wanted to go the nepotism route, I think you would go with Coppola.
I mean, maybe he wanted to prove he could like make it by himself without the name or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, that's what I would assume. Yeah, good for him.
There's other famous people that are Coppolas too. are related to that family.
Okay, yeah, I don't know many of them though. Yeah. But it's like so this movie is set in like the 1940s, and like all the settings look so good, like the cars, everything. Like it really, you do buy into it for the most part. Um, and it's cool to see that time period and like So here's what I understand: the book that was written based on was I think the mob had to like be involved in that, or maybe it was the movie. I'm not sure which one. I think it was the movie. Like they didn't want Coppola or anybody to make this movie without their own like input on it. Like they wanted to like sign off on this movie. So he got a lot of like real influence from like mobsters and stuff about like how it works and everything.
I guess that's my biggest thing, and probably why I haven't watched these movies. Is I don't know why mob movies have just never done it for me. I've never been fascinated by that culture. Like I've never watched The Sopranos. There's a lot of other like big name like mafia movies that I've never watched. But I probably one of these days I really should watch the Godfather movies just to say that I did.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
You were mentioning though, like, about how shooting things back then must have been stressful. And I gotta think, like, just to have to shoot things on film rather than digital,
Mhm.
like, I'm sure shooting any movie is stressful, but to me, that had to add a whole new element. And like, it's more expensive. You got like, a
A limited,
finite amount,
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that's what it was. Like that was the hard part with that, like, and it's incredible that they can make such something like that. It's a 3-hour movie, like with so many like intricate scenes and like you know the dialogue had to be delivered a certain way. And I think the studio really didn't want Al Pacino to play Michael Corleone in that movie, but like I think it was Coppola who really wanted him, and I mean, perfect fit. Yeah.
I think Coppola, like, he has some movie that's coming out maybe like this year or something, but apparently, like, it's like it's. I think he had to like fund it, you know, like it's independently produced, and he had to get like funding himself. But like, apparently, like, it's a very expensive movie, and like, I don't know if it'll pay off or not.
Man, I didn't even know he was still alive.
Yeah, I think he's up there in age, but yeah, apparently he's got one more movie in him. So
Good for him.
I think he owned like a winery or like a wine business or something that he might have
Oh, I've
like
heard of that. I think I've
like
seen his
he
one.
yeah, I think he might have sold that business just to be able to like, fund. I don't know if it was this film or a different one, but like he has a history of like, taking risks to get movies made, I guess.
I mean, if he got in the wine industry early, then good for him. I know a lot of like actors and everybody like trying to get into wine now, like Aviator and like what was that? The Rock has his own too. Like
Oh, there's
everybody.
a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of celebrities that have their own like alcohol businesses. Yeah, I think like Ryan Reynolds also has one.
Aviator.
I think George Clooney has one.
Golly.
Actually,
I think Ashton Kutcher might have one.
who knows? It might be up for sale eventually, but I think P Diddy has a pretty successful
Oh,
one as well.
yeah, I bet he does. Yeah, yeah, that might be up for sale for sure.
Or it might just buy him enough good lawyers that he never gets in trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe, yeah, but it's a bad look for that company. They probably want him like out. They probably buy him out or something. I imagine. Like you don't want
Actually,
to do with him.
what's going on with P Diddy? Because I know they raided his homes, but they haven't like actually charged him with anything or arrested him at this point, have they?
I heard that he's running like some sort of sex ring.
I mean,
And
that's what he's accused of, basically. I think some sort
yeah,
of sexual trafficking.
I mean, he's rich enough to like where you think like he might be able to weasel his way out of this, like worm his way out. Like, I mean, the fact that no charges have been pressed and like, I'm sure like whatever was it New York State, if he just like donates, like $50 million to some politicians and the police department or something like that, he's golden probably. So I don't know. We'll see how that works out.
Well, it's like look at Cosby. He did like a couple years in prison or whatever, but eventually got out. And even like right now, like Harvey Weinstein, like his
Oh, his charge
conviction.
got
What's that?
overturned or something like.
Yeah, well, So I think his conviction in New York was overturned, but he was convicted of crimes both in New York and L.A. So like right now he's still in prison, but he if he can find a way to overturn the L.A. conviction, he could still presumably get out. And like it totally wouldn't surprise me if that happens.
There's no laws against rich people.
You know that quote of Donald Trump where he was like, I could shoot a man like on Fifth Avenue or whatever and get away. He's
Yeah,
completely right.
yeah, for sure.
I think he's completely right.
But I mean, he said it in a way that like he's so loved and he's so great. But it's more like he has so much power and influence and money that he could do it. That's not something to brag about. It's just a, a corruption within our society.
Let's see. You been watching anything else on the movie or TV front?
Gosh, I'm sure I have. I'm still watching Ghost.
Oh,
Still,
right.
still going strong. Like it's just a fun, quirky show that I watch like in bed. Going to sleep. Um, Watching X-Files. Uh, it's just nostalgic, and it still holds up. It holds up. Like I know we talked about like the special effects and stuff like that. They don't hold up, but like the writing and like the rest of it, like it's just fun. Like it's a fun sci-fi show.
You know what
Um.
my show like that is right now? I've been rewatching The King of Queens, and
Oh, okay.
like I haven't watched it in a long time. It's surprising like how many episodes I remember, given that I haven't watched it in a long time.
Oh yeah.
But man, that show it holds up too. It's a fun, breezy show. I'm really enjoying like rewatching it.
Okay. What else did I watch? The X-Files. Oh, I watched that movie Smile,
Hmm.
the horror movie.
Right. I remember seeing the trailer for that. Like, I went to the theater and watched something, and I remember that playing. So how was that?
Not very scary. I watched it alone in bed at night, and I was just like, this isn't scary at all. I don't know. Yeah. It was a fun movie though. It was fun. Like it was a good movie, because like the storyline was kind of, it wasn't like it wasn't like I hate scary movies. So I watched It Follows again recently, and like there's so many stupid things that girl, and I didn't pick up on it when I watched it the first time, but she does every trope in a horror movie that you can do. She runs upstairs. She does like all the stupidest things, all the dumb things. And like the second I watched it, I was just like, I was so frustrated with her. I was like, she deserves to die. Like, I hope she. Like, have you seen that movie?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's if you ever do that, like, there's things that should be communicated in that movie. Like, once you do that thing that causes
Well,
uh
I know the premise is basically it's like a kind of like an STD thing. Like
yeah,
somebody has sex, and then like this thing starts slowly following them,
yeah.
and yeah.
Okay, so this girl is so dumb. Like in the first scene, this guy tells her what the deal is. Look, I had sex with you. This is what's going to happen. That's why he gets to live, because he told her what's going to happen. Now she's going to live. As long as she's alive, the thing has to go after her first and then him if she kills her or it kills her. But she sleeps, she sleeps with people. She sleeps with one guy who does know the situation. He doesn't believe it, though. She sleeps, then she finds some random dudes on a boat, hooks up with them, presumably. Like, they don't show anything, but like you think, like, okay, she goes and hooks up with three dudes on a boat. The thing is following her immediately. That means that she didn't tell them. She just hooked up with them and was like, they'll die in the next 24 hours. Like, she didn't even try to, like, set up, like, hey, you got to survive so I can live. Like, now you have to live, right? Like, that's the smart play. But, like, literally right after she sleeps with them, it starts chasing her down. I'm like, what the? Did you just, like, sign these guys death warrants without, like, even trying to be tactical in any way? Like, it's just, oh my god, there's so many dumb things that happen in this movie, man. It's so frustrating.
It's like that thing of not wanting to tell somebody you gave them an STD.
I guess so, yeah. But I mean, the thing is, like, the STD won't kill you unless it kills them first. So
Yeah, that's true.
you should tell them. So yeah, I watched that. Oh, I watched more of the Orville. Well, there's only 2 seasons. I think I've watched them all. but I went back and watched some
Um,
episodes. Mhm.
there's 3 seasons.
Oh, I only saw two on Hulu, I think, or maybe Paramount Plus. I'm not sure which one it was.
I think Hulu. I watched it on Hulu. I think it might also be on Disney Plus now since they kind of share programming. But
Oh,
I there are 3 seasons. I don't know if maybe they moved one off of Hulu or not, but
it's
yeah,
probably
that's
on
a
Disney
great
Plus.
show.
Yeah. I'm planning on watching the third season then for sure. I do want to see that. So I mean, is that it? Just 3 seasons, or are you like gonna make more? Or?
They have not announced another one. Like I follow Seth MacFarlane on Twitter, and like for a while he was like, fingers crossed and all this stuff, but then he never said anything else. So I'm thinking it's probably done, but who knows? Maybe it'll be one of those things where they can squeeze out a movie or something eventually. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
But
Community
it's
is
a fun
better.
show. I really
Mhm.
like that show.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if I. Yeah, I think that might be it from what I've watched. So there might be more, but it'll come back to me. Let's talk about what you watched, man.
So I rewatched. I hadn't seen it in a long time, but have you ever seen the movie District 9?
I have, yeah.
Um, and it's really good. I thought the premise is like these aliens come down. Basically, their mothership like is broken, and they it's over like Johannesburg, South Africa. So they end up, it's basically like you know an analogy for apartheid, and they basically put them in this all the aliens in this camp, and then like they're trying to relocate him, and like the main guy gets like sprayed, and he starts turning into one of them,
Yeah.
basically. But it's all very like cynical but realistic in a way where like the government like is just like brutal, and like they're trying to use him to use the alien weaponry basically, and like do like really bad stuff. And it's like it's cynical, but at the same time you're like, this is exactly what would happen. Like I think they nailed it as far as like if this was a real situation, this is exactly what the government would do. You know what I
Oh, for
mean?
sure. Yeah. Um, I want to look this up real quick because I know there's some controversy about one of the actors from District 9. Um, he said something that was really controversial.
Well, Charlton Copley's like the main guy. I have no idea who like most of the other actors are. They're to me like unknowns. But um
Yeah, that's right.
actually, speaking of him, I don't think I've seen him act in anything. Like I think he still does act. I think it's just by chance I haven't really caught him in anything recently. But yeah, I was just rewatching this movie, and I'm like, this is like a good, like solid sci-fi flick. And I know at one time, like they they were considering making like a sequel, like District 10 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they never did. A part of me after seeing this movie, I was like, you know what? I think there's like room there to make a sequel to this that could be to be good. But it stands alone on itself. It's I thought very well done, and actually like some of the visual effects I thought were pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it wasn't too long ago, but it probably was like 12 years ago now, huh?
Yeah, I think it was like 2009, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Okay. You know what? I'm looking it up. I don't think he said anything too controversial. Yeah, I think he's fine. Okay.
not canceled yet. Huh?
Yeah, not canceled.
I finished season 3 of Resident Alien. Still a very
Oh,
fun show.
yeah.
That's another show where I'm like,
You said season 3?
yeah, season 3.
Oh, man. Okay.
It's another show where I'm like, I'm fingers crossed they don't cancel it because it left off on a cliffhanger.
Okay.
A part of me is like, TV shows need to be careful these days not to end on cliffhangers necessarily, because like unless you know for sure you're getting another season, and like it's always dubious these days. But that's a fun show.
I do gotta tell you, I got a little buzzed right one night, and when I get buzzed, I just have to go back and watch my comfort shows and movies. And I had to sign up for Disney Plus and watch some Marvel content.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I went back to it. It's always fun to watch the old movies, like Endgame, and that was old, right? Like it's been a while since they've come out.
Yeah,
Uh,
it has been now. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I did see that they have X-Men '97. I haven't broke it open yet and watched it, but I've been seeing that people are reviewing them, so it might be something to watch.
I do want to watch that. I figure like next time I have a good excuse to get Disney Plus, I'll definitely I'll watch X-Men '97 because yeah, same. I've heard nothing but good things about it, so
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know when it comes out. I think this summer maybe, but there's going to be another Star Wars show, so maybe we'll review that, and that'll give me an excuse to get back into on Disney.
All right. Um, have you heard about Rebel Moon? I don't know much about it, but everybody's all over it.
Yeah, I have heard it, and it's on Netflix, and I don't have Netflix right now. Yeah, it's a Zack Snyder movie, and I know there's two of them, part one and part two,
Hmm.
and yeah, people have just been dumping on them. I gotta say, I'm still kind of curious to actually watch them.
Yeah.
I think next time I get Netflix, I probably will check them out despite the reviews, just because I'm curious about it. But then on the other hand, it's kind of silly just because like it's Netflix and they can put up anything. But he's already saying that he's got like an extended cut of the movie, and I'm like, it seems to me like they're trying to recreate like the Snyder cut thing, but it doesn't make sense in this context because it's not like, oh, it's going to theaters first, so you got to be like really, you know, you got to like make everything hit the cutting room floor. It's like, it's Netflix. He really could have put any cut on it, he wanted to, rather than put like a certain cut and then a quote unquote director's cut. You know what I mean? It just seemed
Yeah.
like a weird thing.
Yeah. Snyder's all about those cuts, though. Right? Isn't he like, oh, well, no.
Well,
Yes.
now he is, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, he is. Um, hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to watch it. I did hear from Moist Critical, he watched that movie Monkey Man. People are kind of like saying some good things about it. Like it's kind of it's decent, like pretty good is what people are saying. I think for the most part. Um,
Kind of what I heard too is like, you know, it's like solid, but it's nothing like groundbreaking. So it's like,
right,
eh.
right, yeah. But I did hear like the challenges they had making that movie. Like people died. Uh, Dev Patel broke his arm, so he was using like one arm. Uh, they got kicked out of India, and then the movie got banned in India, and they had to go shoot in another country. And like he had to, at one point, all their equipment failed, or like I guess they had electrical issues or something. He had to shoot on his iPhone. Like that was a weird. Like I don't know how they even made that movie.
why did he get why did he get banned from shooting in India?
I guess they said it was anti-Hindu. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know anything about that. But I mean, I don't know why they felt that way, but yeah, they said it was. I
That
thought
actually does make me a little curious to watch it now and like see if I can spot what their problem was with it.
I thought Dev Patel was Hindu, to be honest. Like I don't know. Like maybe he's not. I guess maybe he is. Maybe he just made something that's controversial to people of his own religion. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I think I did hear like at one point in the movie, I don't know if this would like cause a stir, is like I think there's like a section where he goes to like a monastery or something and there's like trans people there or something.
Oh yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't know if that would cause like an issue or
No, I
something.
don't think that would, because like I think trans people in India are like they're kind of respected. Like they're not like given like like a good opportunity in life. They don't live like the best life or anything. But like if you have a child, if you have like a firstborn son or something or a son, they always like come to the village or the house or whatever it is, and like they're the ones who like celebrate that thing. Like so there's still like a ceremonial thing with them. Like so I don't know, like that probably doesn't translate over to their whole entire life though, and how they're treated in general. So yeah, I think I heard it was good representation too for them, so that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I just the other day started watching Fallout based on the video game.
Okay.
It's on Amazon because I heard basically a lot of people saying like it's really good, and I've only seen the first 2 episodes so far, but I gotta say it's very good. Like I'm excited to watch more. Uh, I've never played any of the Fallout games though. Have you?
I did, yeah. Fallout 3. It's such a big world, such a long game that I don't think
That's what I've
I
heard.
finished it. Yeah, but it's fun. Like, there's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of like puzzles in a way. Like, but it's fun. I liked it. It was overwhelming. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Is that they're very long games, and also like I'm not the biggest fan of like first person perspective games, so I'm like I'm probably not going to play these. But so far the show is very good. So like I'm excited to finish it. You mentioned Shogun earlier. I during between the last time we talked and now, I finished it. I think it was 10 episodes long.
Mhm.
I did like it. I will say I was surprised it wasn't as action packed as I thought like it might be going into it. It definitely is more about
Politics.
yeah, politics and maneuvering, and there is some action in it, but I would say it's much more about like political maneuvering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a solid show. I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And then still watching Star Trek Discovery, which is it's fine. They're still hopping around finding pieces of this mysterious map or whatever, So
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes, but it's fine.
I watched Oh, okay. So I watched Three Body Paradox. Not all of it, but parts of it.
Okay.
Um, I don't know how much is based on the books. Uh, I never read the books, but I did have some. Like, I watched a video where somebody explained the books and like what the theme was and how it like the story was. And then I watched the show and I was like, maybe there's a lot of details that get lost in the explanation. But I don't know. It does not exactly line up with what I was told about the books. So I'm not sure how in line they are. And I huh? Is it?
This is some of the reviews I heard. Like somebody said, like it starts off very slow, and
Mhm.
it took them probably like 3 or 4 episodes before they could get like really into it and start understanding like how it
Yeah,
was like structured.
yeah. So like we probably got to like episode 4 or 5, and I think we just didn't really feel the show. Like it was just yeah. The books sound really good, like with the way they're talked about and stuff. The way it was broken down, but the show itself just I don't know. It wasn't the pacing maybe was a problem for me, but yeah, not a big fan.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's one of those things where like sometimes if you don't start with something early enough that hooks the people, like sometimes it is hard to get into a show.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it is just a little too slowly paced. I kind of think of. Have you ever watched that show, The Americans?
No, but that's about Russian people who like are pretending to be American or
Yeah. It's basically a the Russian government like planted Russian spies in America, and they had family. And it's a good show. It's a very solid show, but I will say it is very deliberately paced. Like it's very like slow paced sometimes. Like sometimes there'll be several episodes where like it's mostly dialogue and not a lot of action, but it will be building to something. Eventually, you'll get to an episode where stuff does go down, and you'll be like, oh, okay, like
yeah.
it'll be a little more exciting of an episode. But like, um, I could see people trying that show and being like, this is boring and just stopping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's paced that way, but it is a good show.
So okay. You know that channel New Rockstars?
I really haven't watched it much. I've heard of it though.
Okay. Well, they always cover like new movies that are like, mostly comic book related, but other stuff too that's like like comic adjacent, I would say. Even like maybe sci-fi, Star Wars too. But I guess there are Star Wars comics. But so they have like really like because of this comic book movie like Slowdown, they're like really try to like churn out anything they can. And like they covered like the Deadpool movie, like the one that's coming out like so many times, and there's like they're breaking down the trailer and everything. But okay, I do hope that channel survives. I hope they do well. I hope they succeed because I do like them a lot. And when the movies do start coming out, I'm gonna start watching them a lot. But what do you think? Like, I think it's a great thing that Marvel like and DC took a break and was trying to do things right. But what do you think about the effect that these Sony movies have had on the comic book landscape? Like, because Marvel wasn't doing great, but and DC wasn't doing great, but Sony really isn't doing great.
God, I'm really curious what Sony is going to do long term because they're making these Spider-Man adjacent movies,
The
and really
cheese
they're
is so hard.
for the most part they're not doing well. I think the Venom movies made them money, but Morbius was a big failure. Madam Web was a big failure. They just announced, I think, that um,
Craven.
Craven is like getting a delay somewhat. Um, and I don't see that movie being successful. I could possibly see Venom 3 being successful just because the other two were successful.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but it's like, I'm curious what they're going to do. Are they going to just keep churning these out until they get enough like that lose money to where they're like, oh, we got to. I mean, I think eventually they're going to get to the point where they go, do we sell to Marvel or make some sort of co-partnership, long-term co-partnership deal like we did with the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, or do we do a James Gunn style reboot and say, hey, forget everything you just watched, we're rebooting once again, maybe with a new Spider-Man. I don't know what they do at this point because it seems to me there's just a structural problem at Sony. Otherwise, you would not see this many bad comic book movies across the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I saw a breakdown of Madam Web by a guy who seems to know what he's talking about, and he was talking about how like there's so much ADR in that movie that just and it seems like they completely changed the storyline, like with the rewrites. Like even the actors confirmed that there were a lot of rewrites, and from what he was thinking was like there was a Spider-Man in this movie. It was probably like either a different universe version of Tom Holland or a who's that English? Oh, Andrew Garfield. So just a different like universe version of them, not related to the Marvel universe, but like the cinematic universe. But like I guess maybe they had filmed it all or something, but they just cut all that stuff and they made it about these three girls who became like Spider Women, and it kind of makes sense, because there was talk about like a Spider-Man being in that movie, So I mean, but why would they do that? Why would you take a good movie and do that to it? I just don't understand. Like, I'm sure there's like some financial incentive or some sort of legal thing or something, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know. A part of me feels like if Andrew Garfield like was on set for any length of time, something would have leaked about him being there. Maybe not, but at the same time, even if he wasn't there, like you, I think the thing with studio interference is it's not always a bad thing if it's done on the front end, before shooting begins. But if a lot of studio interference takes place in post production, that's
Yeah,
where you get really wonky stuff where things are ADR like nonstop and they're cut up really weirdly.
yeah.
And I think that's you know I haven't seen Madam Web. I don't really want to, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's a big piece of the puzzle.
I haven't seen Madam Web or Morbius, but from Morbius, I understand that there was a trailer that had like a poster of Spider-Man on the wall, and then in the actual movie, they cut that out. Like there was no Spider-Man on the wall. And then they also had like they added that end scene with the Vulture meeting him up.
Oh, right.
So like that was all just added post, like post everything like in post. But like I guess they were trying to like I guess the higher ups were like, no, we need to make the Sinister Six a thing, so like that's why they did it. But yeah, it's so bad. I never watched Morbius. I never watched Madam Web. Did you see Morbius? You did.
I did. It's bad. It's bad. You don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day it was just on Netflix or something, and I got curious, and I was like, fine, I'll watch Morbius. And yeah, it's. I wish I could say it's so bad it's good, but it's not. It's just kind of boring and lame, and it's not very fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just, man, yeah, I don't. It's like one of those things where like everybody like everyone from a fan perspective, I think would is just like, come on, Sony, like sell to Marvel, like or work out some sort of profit sharing deal where like Marvel does all the creative stuff and you both get a share of the profits. Whatever you did for the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, basically, like do
Yeah.
it for everything
Yeah.
and make it like a long term, maybe like forever deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
That way, like they're still always getting a piece of the pie. You know, but then again, maybe Marvel wouldn't go for that. I have no idea, but like it just seems like they got to work out something because yeah, there's something wrong if they're making this many like just terrible movies in a row.
yeah. I mean, so there's two sides to this, right? Right now, Marvel's taking a break and DC's taking a break, and Sony. I feel like when Marvel was making a bunch of movies and DC was too, Sony could release a movie and people would be like, "Oh, well, it's a comic book movie. I guess I'll watch it because I'm watching all these other comic book movies and maybe it's related or something." But now that they are on their own, they're the only ones making them right now. They really stand out, like, and it says a lot about what they're like. They're not getting away with it anymore. Basically, is what I'm saying. So they're like really stands out. It doesn't get covered up by like a good Marvel movie or a good DC movie. Like, oh well, whatever. So like when people are like, maybe even craving like a good comic book movie right now, possibly, like they have to go watch one of these movies and it's just like, oh my god, it does not live up to what I've been watching. And like, so I mean, maybe that helps Marvel because like with Sony failing so badly, Marvel could be like, well, look, like when we get back into it, like we're gonna be kicking butt. Like you could work with us, or you could just do it on your own and see what happens. Maybe that's one thing. But also another thing is that if Sony to bed so hard with 3 straight movies, Morbius, Madam Web, and Craven, while nobody else is releasing anything, what does that do to the comic book fans? Like, are they gonna be like we talked about fatigue, like people do talk about it, but when you have 3 movies come out back to back to back like this, like, are people going to be like kind of like, I'm not going to say, I would say like, cinematically traumatized? Like, are they going to want to go watch a Marvel movie or a DC movie after these movies?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the truth is, even if Sony wasn't a player in this game, like when DC and Marvel are going like full bore, like there's just already enough movies and TV to cause fatigue, I think.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, I think what causes fatigue more than anything is just bad movies in the genre.
Yeah.
And like, I think for me, people like me and you that understand that there's a difference between the Sony Marvel movies and the MCU Marvel movies,
Yeah.
like for us, it's not as big as a deal because we're like, well, we basically already know those are probably going to be bad, and they're not really in a continuity that we're invested in or care about. But I could definitely see for maybe people who are younger or just not in tune like we are, that yeah, I think it probably does cause them to be like, man, superhero movies are going downhill. I think maybe I'll just cool it on the genre altogether. So
Right.
yeah, I do kind of worry about like the effects it could have. But I I think that all you need to cure that is just good movies. So like if DC and Marvel proper can get their stuff together and start putting out quality stuff, I don't worry too much about the genre. But um, I think it's almost inevitable that there'll become a time where like both DC and Marvel stop making as much as they do, because like I'm not saying that that the superhero genre will go quite the way of the Western, where like there's as few of them made as there are Westerns made today.
Right.
But I don't think they can continue at the pace that they are without eventually the public going, yeah, I like this, but like I need something different. You know what I mean?
I do. Okay, so there was a time where I loved them making more and more content. I was like,
Yeah,
make more, please. I'll eat it all up. And that's when they were making intriguing and like a building up a big story altogether, right? Because like before they got to Infinity War, there must have been like 18 movies or something that came out before that, like all like building up to that one thing, like several.
yeah, it was a
The
lot.
Yeah, and that was all great. It was fun. Um, Even after Endgame, like people were still intrigued. Like WandaVision was great, Loki was great. I was ready to eat up the content still, but and nobody expects them to have 100% hit rate, but they started missing a lot. After that, and it seemed like they didn't really have a strategy after that. And here's the thing with westerns, like that culture died, but when it comes to comic books, that could be the future always. Like it's a
Yeah,
fantasy. So like
yeah.
as long as you're writing good stuff and you're basing it off of a great storyline, you can do anything with it. You can just keep building and building, and people will keep eating it up. And I feel like they didn't take advantage of Gore the God Butcher. They really effed that one up pretty badly. Um, and like we saw with that Nick Fury show, even Falcon Winter Soldier was okay. Hawkeye was not great. Echo was not great. Like they went on a roll of just making like mediocre to bad stuff, and that's where they kind of lost everybody. So like, if they can just go back to that strategy of building up another, like start like phase 1 to phase 5, do it all over again, do it a new thing now, you know.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like with the Marvel TV stuff, like we have enjoyed some of their stuff, like Loki and WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
But like overall, I think there's been more so far, more misses than hits on the Marvel TV side. And I think I would be more excited for their movies if they didn't have any TV stuff, just because there'd be less stuff to keep track of.
Yeah.
Even though, like I said, I have enjoyed some of the TV stuff, and as long as it's good, like I'm all up for it. But
Mhm.
I just don't know if you can spread yourself that thin and keep the level of quality up. And I think that might be Marvel's issues they've had in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, so I do like the idea of keeping the shows and the movies like the shows can be in the same timeline, the same universe and everything, but they shouldn't like have an impact on somebody who just watches the movie. So you can have like their own intriguing storyline, going on in like, their own little, locale or whatever they're working on. Like let's say Loki, like with King the Conqueror, like that's not like a big uh you know from what we understand, it's going to be a huge, movie at the end, right? There's going to be like a two-part, something like, what's that called? Something Secret Wars.
Yeah, Secret Wars.
Do like the impression that we're getting is it has to do with like Kang, right? For so far, anyway.
Well, I think they've put the. I don't think they're doing that anymore with the Jonathan Major stuff. I think they're basically going to say, yeah, we wrapped his thing up in Loki season 2, and I
Okay.
think they're just going to move on to. Um, uh, I don't know if it'll be Galactus or something. Or Doctor Doom. It'll probably be Doctor Doom heavy if I had to guess.
And I can appreciate that. Like, I do like Kang. I would have loved to see more Kang. As a different actor, of course. Like somebody, they did talk about different people. But and if they wanted to go that way, that's fine. Just don't make it part of the movies. Like, keep it in the Loki show. Do Doctor Doom with the movies. Like make him like the villain of Secret Wars and stuff like that. So so that people can follow like a disjointed storyline. Well, not disjointed, but separate from TV shows. So I think most people would appreciate that.
Although, what's weird about the Kang thing is, how you were saying you think people should be able to just watch the movies and still get the whole picture, and that the TV stuff is just side content. Well, it's a little bit jarring for people just watching the movies because, like, Quantumania set up Kang
Right.
as like this big thing and hinted that he would be back in some way. And like, if you didn't watch Loki, then that storyline just goes nowhere.
True, true, yeah.
So it's like they did kind of shoot themselves in the foot that way, to where, like, you know,
You know, but it doesn't have to be part of the main story, like the big build up to Secret Wars. It could just be like a side story, like with Kang. Like um, so Ant-Man is still dealing with Kang, right? Or maybe Tony Stark when he learned about time travel. Remember when he says like time has a way of like getting you back or something? Maybe he had an adventure where he defeated Kang at the end or something. Like make that part of the old storyline, even like with the old Avenger, like Tony Stark, right? And then you don't have to push forward with that being part of like this new, build up.
but if you were to do that story, like, where would you fit it in?
I think it would go between like at some point in Endgame, like when he discovers time travel. Let's say Tony like travels and like sees Kang, and like he goes through his whole adventure and has to deal with him. But it's all through different time periods, and that's why we see Kang later on in Quantumania because he hasn't yet like it's like it's not quite a loop. It's like time is it's a weird thing, right? You don't know where you are at certain points. Like he's in the future, he's in the past, but eventually he meets up with Tony Stark. So maybe that's where like he gets dealt with and it ends there.
But if you were to actually like tell that story, like, would you do it as a movie? And like, what would you call it?
Yeah, I don't know what I'd call it, but I think I think as a movie, yeah.
So you would do like a one-off movie to wrap up the Kang storyline?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. You need to explain, like, I mean, but we have seen him in Ant-Man. Are we going off of the Loki series too? Are we still taking that information and putting that in here? Or are we assuming that nobody's watched Loki?
You know, the way they did it in Loki, I think you could play it either way. You could say they wrapped up the storyline in Loki,
Yeah,
or you could continue it, uh, either way. But yeah, I think even if you had continued it, you wouldn't necessarily have. I guess you could probably conclude it in a movie without referencing Loki season 2. I would think.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and in this situation, what you could have is Scott, Ant-Man. He travels back to that time where Tony Stark learns to time travel, and like they both deal with Kang together, and that way it ends with Quantumania, like part two of Quantumania too. So like you wrap that up together.
I mean, I would be in favor of them wrapping up the Kang storyline in a movie, but I don't think they are. I don't
I
think
don't
they
think
are.
so
But
either. Yeah, I think it's gonna walk away from it, and we understand why. Like it's not like they just said, "Oh, we're giving up on the storyline because we don't want it anymore." Like She-Hulk, I guess. But this is more like their circumstances. I think most people recognize that, and it doesn't hurt their perception of what's going on with the storyline, the overall storyline.
but on the other, I would push back on that a little bit, just because, like, unless there was something in Jonathan Majors' contract that made it impossible to recast him,
Mm-hmm.
then I would push back on that, just saying, like, they've already recast several people in the MCU.
Yeah,
So, like, what's the big deal of recasting him? You know what I mean?
no, I'm on
Um,
board. I was definitely on board with continue with Kang. Like if that's my first choice,
yeah.
but it had to be that it was in his contract. I imagine that must be it because I mean, there was so much money in that storyline. Like Loki was doing very well. Everybody was intrigued by Kang. Like he was like very much like considered the next big baddie, and people accepted that. So yeah,
It does seem weird though that Marvel would make that concession in a contract just because, like, you know, it seems like if they did it for him, everybody would insist upon
Yeah,
a "don't replace me" clause or whatever, you know.
yeah. I mean, they didn't. I don't think they did it with Chadwick Boseman. Like there was always talk about like replacing him or what should we do, and I think it was still open. There was an option to replace him. So like if you don't,
And you would think it, at the very least, if Marvel made a deal like that, they would give themselves like a morality clause, like kind of thing, to where like, yeah, like if you're,
or,
convicted or you're put in some sort of scandal, like we have the option of replacing you.
yeah,
But who knows?
yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point. Like it does make it hard to believe that they just they were forced to give up on this a little bit. And if they weren't forced, then I don't understand why they would give up on it. Like, it seems like such a cool storyline. And I've seen who they talked about replacing him with. There's a few options, and they all look great. Like, they all seem like solid options, good actors, like people who play in the theater and stuff like that. So,
Although to be fair, Quantumania underperformed. Like a lot of people hated it. I was like, I think we all were like pretty lukewarm on it. A lot of people just straight up hated that movie. So, I mean, maybe the audience at large, like,
I
maybe
don't
they
think
saw the results of Quantumania and they were like, we don't need to push this storyline any further.
I think Quantumania was done poorly. I think Loki was done much better.
Yeah,
Um, if we're talking about just going off the movies, I still think you can develop King because there's so many versions of him, and they do show that in the movie, right? That there are different versions of him.
yeah,
So
they do. Yeah.
I mean, there's still so much to work with there. I think what was bad about that movie was Modoc. The bad humor,
Visually, he looked very strange.
yeah, the terrible humor, the lighthearted approach, like to everything. When this guy is like committing genocide everywhere, and he's like that dangerous. Um, and the defeat of Kang at the end by Ant-Man. Like these are all like counter to you building up like a serious big bad guy. So I mean, yeah, they could have done that much better, I think.
Well, we've talked about it. I think the MCU suffers that from that uh, on the whole. Of like tonally, they like to keep things so silly and lighthearted that there never seems to be any stakes. And like, even though I'm looking forward to Deadpool, like the villain there is Cassandra Nova, who in the comics is like a pretty like formidable, like scary villain. But
Mhm.
Deadpool is going to be weighted towards the jokes. So like I wouldn't be surprised if that movie, like the villain, doesn't seem like a real threat. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a silly thing.
I get it, but okay. In the first Deadpool, the villain was very much an asshole, and we hated that villain. Like it was pretty. So he was like Deadpool was himself, but even there was some grit and grime to Deadpool. Like it was almost like he had to make the jokes, or else he would like be crying if he wasn't. And I think that's kind of his thing. Like he suffers, but he deals with it by joking. And we get that; it comes across. It's not like the Marvels, where it's just so ridiculous and
Yeah.
goofy and like so. I would say too light. There's no gravity. Um, there's like people literally. These people are destroying planets, but you don't get that impression. Like there's no sadness over it. Like
Right.
we talked
Yeah,
about that
because
one.
it's always silly. It's always lighthearted. It's always silly. There's no
Yeah,
gravity to the danger at all.
hardly any mourning to anything that major events. Like yeah, that was just the approach was really bad, and you can't cut and paste that approach to every movie because it worked in Thor Ragnarok to some
Yeah.
extent. And that's kind of because we didn't expect it in Thor Ragnarok, to be honest. Like we hadn't seen that from Thor, right? So it was a welcomed fresh approach to Thor because there was the first Thor movie, which he was like very serious. He's always a straight man. Then there's the second Thor movie where he was even more like it was more serious and just it wasn't very fun. It was just very blah. And then third movie, we were all very pleasantly surprised by the new look Thor, the new personality and everything. But
But I think Thor: Love and Thunder showed though that like it's a
they went
delicate balance, and they went in Thor: Love and Thunder. They went too far the other direction. It got too silly, and the villain wasn't given enough gravity, and
no, and you can't do that with Gore the God Butcher. Like he is such a serious villain. Like if you read you've probably read the comics. Like
yeah,
he's done some effed up things, and he is merciless, brutal, cruel. He has no heart whatsoever. Like he's done some messed up stuff to Thor, and they don't even show that in
right.
the movie. Like it's unbelievable. They nerfed him so badly, personality wise. Like, yeah, that was. I saw like a GIF or something, or like a meme. Like there's a scene in The Godfather where the Don Corleone, he's looking at his dead son, and he's like, "Look what they did to my boy." And like, there's literally that's about Gore the God Butcher. Like, look what they did to my boy. Like they beat them up so badly.
Well, I mean, if you look at the most compelling like villain in the MCU, it's Thanos. Not just because he's like the big bad, but because he actually comes across as serious,
Yeah,
and he actually does serious things, and those things are given weight to them, and
he's taken seriously by everybody.
yeah, and even though there are still like there's still jokes and humor in those movies, but he's taken seriously,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
react to him as a serious threat.
yeah. And like he doesn't joke around. Like if somebody, okay, so Tony Stark calls him Grimace. He doesn't like have a quick quirk or like a quip to say back or anything. He's just like, okay, you want to play, like like he still brings that menacing tone, and it just brings you back to like, okay, this guy is like real. You don't want to f with him, like yeah, I don't know, like Gore the God Butcher, he kidnaps a bunch of kids, doesn't kill them, nothing. He would kill them in real life. We know that, like in the comics anyway. But like,
Right.
he's just abducting children. Oh, he'll come for you. It's like, oh, that's not Gore the God Butcher, man. Like, and if he did have a trap, it would be a real trap. Like he would not let Thor get off that easy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, those are definitely the best Thor comics. Is that Jason Aaron run with the Gore the God Butcher storyline?
And like,
So if anybody is interested in reading Thor comics, that's what I would recommend.
and I keep going back to this, but I have to say it. Gore the God Butcher, as great as he is, you can use him as a stepping stone for Null, because Null is the one who created that sword, the Necro Sword. So it all could tie together to an amazing villain. It's Gore is amazing. Like you could stay with him for like several movies, if you wanted to. Like, but then you could work your way up and be like, okay, this is where it all stems from.
Well, I think Sony's the turd in the punch bowl there too, because I think uh, Noel is too tied into
I know.
Venom and the symbiotes and stuff like that. That
I
I
hope
think there would be an issue.
I hope to God Sony doesn't try to do something with Null. Please, if there's a God, I don't. If there is one, please.
Madam Web 2 featuring Noel.
Oh my God! I see you found my sword.
I found it in the Amazon while my mom was doing something.
She kills him with an ambulance and a Pepsi. Oh my!
Oh man.
Like Null cuts off the heads of Celestials, but I'm sure Madam Web would be like, oh, I got him with the Coca-Cola sign this time or whatever. It's so stupid. Uh,
The other thing is like you mentioned the Marvels, and I'm just like the villain there was such an afterthought. Like I don't even remember that villain's name. Like she didn't even do much of anything. It's just no depth was given to her. There was no reason to ever care about her. It was just I don't know. What a bad movie.
yeah, and like, don't you notice like both of Miss Marvel's enemies killed themselves at the end of those movies, like the show and the movie? Like she was pointless. Just give them both like whatever they want. They'll die, and you win either way. Like
You just got to wait them out.
yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, but I am looking forward to Deadpool. I am like really looking forward to Deadpool.
Yeah, I watched that trailer and I'm like, yeah, it looks good, man.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a long movie too. Like because there's probably a lot to go into. There's like TVA stuff too, I think, or some sort of.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, I don't know if they've announced the runtime, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, a 2.5 hour movie or something like that.
I would appreciate a good movie that's 2.5 hours. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if it's good. I don't mind it being long if it's good.
Yeah.
I heard like someone interviewed like the director of that movie recently, and he said something to the effect that like you don't have to have any like prior like knowledge of other movies to appreciate this Deadpool movie or something. But I'm like, that's not totally true because just the fact that they have Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine,
Yeah.
uh, and also in that trailer they referenced the movie Logan. So I'm like, well, it seems like they expect you to know something about Logan. And then
Right.
also like the rumor is that they're going to have a bunch of cameos from people that were in the Fox X-Men movie. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you might be able to enjoy it, but I don't think you're going to get everything if they're going to have those cameos. You know what I mean? So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
It'd
a
be like
dubious quote.
it'd be like watching No Way Home and not having any idea who Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man were.
Right, exactly. Like, I think you have to have some knowledge going into it to
Yeah.
maybe appreciate everything. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that quote, but
Yeah, the callbacks are a big deal. Like people like those little. Are they even Easter eggs? I mean, people just appreciate the callbacks. It adds to it big time. I mean,
yeah.
when I saw Daredevil in No Way Home, I was like, okay, all right, that's nice. I like that. And then they had, of course, the other callbacks, and it was just like, all right, man, I feel this movie. Like it's putting everything. I like all these characters, and they're putting them all together. It's like a fun time.
Yeah, it looks fun. Yeah, that's when I saw the trailer I was like, yeah, this looks like it's going to be a fun movie.
Yeah.
I like I said earlier, like I'm dubious that the villain they'll just seem like another nothing villain, but you know,
Who was the main villain? Deadpool 2? Like, didn't it turn out to be? Oh, there was the headmaster of the school. He was the real bad guy, right?
it's been a while since I watched Deadpool 2. I should actually rewatch that because I know I enjoyed it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been a while
Like
because I
Juggernaut.
had.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, Juggernaut was in that like final fight or whatever.
Yeah. Like he was like the muscle that they had to fight around. They had to deal with him, but the real bad guy was the headmaster, who was like who that kid like because the kid was going to grow up and kill Cable's family, but it changed when he actually, I guess, did they kill the headmaster or did somebody else kill it? Like something happened where he didn't get that lust for murder, I guess.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that movie. Like I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I like the whole, the team he puts together that dies immediately.
Right.
Yeah. Brad Pitt was one of the members.
Yeah, he was like the Invisible Man, and then he gets electrocuted, and you like briefly like see him.
Yeah, that was fun.
uh, Man, I gotta say, I sympathize with your new Rockstars channel because between like the strikes and certain movies being pushed back, and then like the DC being rebooted, like it is kind of a desert this year as far as like big movies go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we might have to review Craven the Hunter.
No, a fate worse than death.
Aquaman 2 is where I think we draw the line.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. Although you know what, after we watched Aquaman 2, like I was like, you know what, it wasn't the worst thing we've ever watched. Like
No,
it wasn't good. It
Yeah,
was not good.
it was just a mediocre like buddy film, I guess. Like yeah, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it wasn't good. It was just
Right.
I thought Beetle was better than that, except for the whole grandmother part. But I mean, it had more heart in a lot of ways.
I think
Um,
I would agree with that.
yeah.
And I did I think I mentioned this when we reviewed Aquaman. Like I would have never guessed like that like would have liked it better. Like I would have definitely thought before I saw the Marvels that I would have liked the Marvels more than Aquaman 2, but I ended up liking Aquaman 2 more.
Oh yeah,
Somehow.
yeah. Marvel's really set that bar low. I mean,
But yeah,
okay,
like I'll have to
yeah.
look at the movie schedule this year, but there's not a ton coming out that I really want to watch. Like I do want to watch Furiosa, which I think comes out
Hmm,
late this month.
okay,
I do want to watch Deadpool, which is the summer, like July something. I want to say.
yeah, I imagine so.
I'll probably watch Joker 2, although I'm like, I don't know if that'll be any good or not. But did you see the trailer for Joker 2, by the way?
No, I haven't.
It's out. It's worth a watch. Like I'm just curious because it's a musical. Like the movie's going to be a musical, which is an interesting choice. So I'm curious to see that.
I'm usually not a big fan of musicals,
I'm
so
not either, but just putting it in the context of like the Joker and Harley Quinn and a musical, it's so weird that I'm like intrigued by it.
if yeah, maybe they're gonna do something really unique with it. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not up on what DC content is going. When does that Suicide Squad show come out again? Do you know, or are they just starting to work on it?
Um, oh, the Peacemaker show.
Oh yeah, yeah, Peacemaker.
Um, I think James Gunn said he's written it, but he's shooting Superman now, so
Mhm.
I don't think it's shooting yet. At least I
Okay,
haven't heard it. Maybe it'll shoot later this year. I don't know.
so we're not expecting any like DC content for the most part either, huh? Like not even like one or two movies. Like there's a Joker two, and then
I think Joker 2 is the only like DC movie this year.
Mhm,
But we will get the Penguin TV show.
mhm.
And we will, well, I don't think they've announced it yet. There's a chance we could get that Creature Commandos cartoon. Not super excited about that, but I'll watch it.
Mhm. Okay.
But Penguin looks good. I mean, it's unrelated to the James Gunn's like DCU, but
Oh, so it's
it
not
looks
like
good.
Colin Farrell?
It is.
Okay.
So it's in the universe of the Batman, but that franchise is not part of James Gunn's like
Man, okay,
universe.
that's kind of interesting. That's hard to keep track of. Like, okay, so there was the old DCEU, which is completely separate. Then there's the Batman and its universe, which is separate. And then there's James Gunn's vision, and that's separate. That's pretty
Yeah,
complicated. Yeah.
it is convoluted, and I'm interested to see Peacemaker season 2 because that has the task of explaining like um how we have these same characters now in a different universe because it is carrying forward John Cena and those actors that were uh, part of the old universe.
Mhm.
Because remember, they had that episode where they had the Flash and Aquaman on
Oh
it,
right,
so
yeah.
it was definitely in the old universe. So
Mhm.
like he has to find a way of explaining how those characters like come into a new universe. I would presume so.
Well, I mean, okay, are they gonna recast the Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman, or and I guess Superman they already recasted, but are they still gonna keep that whole Justice League kind of like situation, or are they just gonna like get rid of them completely?
I think they're going to recast them because they're definitely not going to rehire friggin' um, the Flash actor
Oh yeah, for sure.
after all their business. Jason Momoa. I mean, the rumor, and I think it's a pretty solid rumor, is he's going to be Lobo rather than
Yeah, yeah,
Aquaman.
I've heard the same.
And then
It's good Lobo actually, because Lobo looks a lot like him in a way. Yeah, just
I don't
pale.
think they've officially said like they're not going to bring Gal Gadot back, but I don't think they are.
I don't think so either. Yeah. Um. Okay, so yeah, they're gonna keep the characters around, just recast them. All right. So I mean, I guess that does fall in line with like Peacemaker, because like they could just ignore the fact that they look different and just go on from there.
They could, but I mean, I, to me, like for people that watch Peacemaker season one but aren't as hardcore about it as us, I would think they would want to give those people like an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe he just won't acknowledge it at all. But I would kind of think like something will happen that'll, explain it. I don't know. I think you kind of have to, but
Yeah, I mean James Gunn is like pretty. He's good about like piecing everything together. You know.
that's the other thing is he's such a like nerd like that I kind of, which I appreciate, which makes me think that he will in some way or another like make the continuity make sense.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, even like with that last Guardians of the Galaxy movie, there was a lot of like past and present tied together. Like Rocket's past and you know stuff that we hadn't seen before, or had any explanation about. He was good about like tying it all together and like making it meaningful. And I think he definitely brings a lot of heart to every movie he does. And I think part of like the investment that the fan has or the viewer has is like being able to see something that's got good continuity as well. So yeah, I imagine he'll do that.
Well, AJ, we somehow talked a whole nother episode without getting into any stories, but no, that's okay. I don't know. I enjoy these nerdy conversations every once in a while. It's
Yeah,
fun to speculate about this kind of stuff,
yeah,
and hopefully sooner than later there'll be some stuff we want to review on the channel. So
yeah.
we hope everybody will stay tuned for that.
I mean,
But
Furiosa
anyway,
coming out at the end of the month, right? So look
yeah,
forward to that.
yeah, for sure. Um, how do you feel about Mad Max Fury Road?
Yeah, the first one was good. I liked it. It is a little over the top, like
Oh,
those
that universe, yeah.
yeah, they're just out of control, like I don't think anybody has the energy to be that way all the time.
It is over the top, but I think in a fun way. Like I enjoy the insanity of it. Um, but I think that'll do it for today's show. So we thank everybody for watching. If you guys will, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can subscribe in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. Leave us thumbs up, positive reviews, comments, all that good stuff. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. But that'll do it for all of our shenanigans and poppycock this week. Please, please, please tune in again next week. Bye, guys.
Here.